hit record. Thank you. Okay, so part one is going to be the information. It'll be dense, but you got me, and I'll walk you through the types of leaves available and the eligibility criteria for them, ways to stay paid while you're on leave, and how to apply and get that leave from work. Part two will be for the heart. And that's when you'll hear from our special guest, Rebecca Roach, my friend who is a software engineer at Lyft. And hers is a remarkable story about how she used a leave of absence and left Burnoutville behind. So before we dive into part one, who am I? My name is Mehul Azad. It's pronounced like the month of May plus Hul from Hulu, but y'all can call me May. My pronouns are they, them. I have a software engineering background, and these are some of the places I've worked at: Amazon, DocuSign, and Walt Disney Imagineering. But I'm also an engineer at heart, and that's one of the places where I feel most myself when I'm building things and writing code. I have been to Burnoutville before, and I burned out bad a couple of years ago. Still remember the trauma. My body remembers it. And that's why I built Normally. I needed a way to help me tangibly see how work impacts my mental health so I can stay ahead of burnout. I'll give you an insight into what my last week looks like in Normally. So the greens that you see refer to times when I felt pleasant and good, and the reds refer to times when I felt unpleasant. So let me tell you the story of my last week. I had a pretty stressful start. As you can see, on Sunday and Monday, there are reds, and they built up pretty intensely around Tuesday. So my stress was compounding each day, and it was manifesting as a hard time unplugging from work. Work was invading my sleep and dreams, and I had a really sharp increase in my back pain. So that was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I couldn't take that any longer. And this is, as you can see, just my story of my last week. And I had to find a way to break the stress cycle. I realized that I have to take the day off and rest. And in going through this period of stress, I also learned that it can take me 3 to 12 hours to feel completely unplugged. And the deeper the stress, the more time it'll take me to get there, which is what you see in the red in how the Wednesday started. Started off pretty unpleasantly because I needed more time for my anxiety to calm down. But after that, I knew that I needed to course correct Thursday onwards. So you'll see that my Thursdays and Friday and Saturday are pretty green. And the way I got there is that I gave myself permission to slow down. I intentionally took more and longer breaks, and I kept the inner critic in check. So what I want to say is that we're human beings, and it's natural for us to deviate off course while we're trying to get shit done. But being able to tangibly see how I'm doing gives me a way to course correct before things get really, really bad. And that was a glimpse of my last week, and weeks also turn into months. So here's what my November looks like at a glance. One of the fun things that I like with Normally is that it'll give me a breakdown of how work impacted me. So you'll see on the graph that I've had fun moments at work. There were also challenges. I clearly struggled with my schedule and the way of doing things, processes. But what I loved seeing was that my November, all the people that I interacted with only uplifted me and no one bugged me. So I felt really good to see that wow, I had a month where I only interacted and ran into people with whom I felt a sense of upliftment. So that's normally, if you are interested, if you think this is a tool that can help you, you can get early access if you just head over to normally.com. We have a wait list right now. So now that you know who we are, let's talk about who we're not. We're not HR. We're not lawyers. This is not going to be legal advice. Our information comes from the other side, which is from the people who've actually taken leaves of absences. So aside from my personal experience, we conducted interviews with people at different tech companies who've navigated the leave of absence process on their end. In doing so, I understood the similarities and differences that exist in this process across companies. And it's that information that we've tried to synthesize into a process map for you. So, why are we doing this? Well, when I went through this process, it was shrouded in mystery. I think it still is. It felt intimidating and overwhelming to navigate this unknown thing, especially on top of dealing with burnout. A lot of folks don't know about this option. And the folks who do know about this hear about it word of mouth. 100% of the people that I talked to found about this via word of mouth through somebody in their circle. So we're here to be that word of mouth for you. I promise that I don't know everything, but I want to share everything that I do know with you. All right, are we ready to begin part one? You're seeing a bunch of abbreviations. Let's look into it and demystify what all these abbreviations mean. So what's an LOA? An LOA stands for a leave of absence. It's often used as an umbrella term, and it refers to an extended leave that isn't covered by PTO. It's usually the kind of leave that's taken for medical or caregiving purposes. What is FMLA? Now, Family and Medical Leave Act. I owe a lot of gratitude to this. This is a federal law that was passed in 1993, and it was passed to allow employees working in USA to take a leave to care for themselves or their families in time of medical need. Sometimes it doesn't involve medical need when it comes to family, but personally, yes, if you have a medical need, this is something that the law was passed so we could do that without the threat of losing our jobs. And the important thing to note is this doesn't just apply to US citizens. This is applicable to anyone who's authorized to work in the USA, which means that if you're on an H-1B, you're still covered here. If you are in a process of getting a green card or have a green card, this also covers you. So this type of leave, it's job protected. What that means is your company can't fire you for taking this leave legally, and they need to give you your job back once you return. So an important thing to note about job protection, though, is that it doesn't protect you from layoffs. This leave can last maximum up to 12 weeks, which is like 3 months. It is unpaid, but you keep your health benefits. And that's because that's by law that the companies must maintain their health coverage for you while you're on this leave. So who is a covered employer for this? which employers need to adhere to this. In private sector, a covered employer is anyone who has had 50 plus employees in 20 or more work weeks in the current or previous calendar year. In general, just think about it that your company needs to have 50 plus employees. But if y'all work for a federal or state agency or any of private or public K-12 schools, those people are supposed to be covered regardless of the number of employees. They don't have that 50 number restriction. So let's talk about FMLA eligibility. You are eligible if you work for a covered employer, you've worked at least a year with them, 12 months, you've worked 1250 hours over the past 12 months, and you have a serious medical condition that impairs you from working. So anxiety and depression or other health challenges that arise from burnout can fall here. Now, a lot of us work remotely. And what about remote employees? You are covered too if the office you report to employs at least 50 people. Think about it like if you live and work remotely from Austin and report to an office in Seattle, you're eligible for FMLA as long as 50 other employees report to the Seattle office as well. So we just covered what FMLA is, and we also pointed out that it's unpaid. So next up, let's look into ways to get paid. The first option is called PFML, or Paid Family and Medical Leave. Now, this exists at a state level. Just like FMLA, the law that exists federally, states can also pass a law on their own level to grant people who reside in the state paid family and medical leave. The benefits now completely depend on the state. Job protection, a lot of times they do offer it, but it depends. How long they allow it, how much they'll pay, what it takes to be eligible for it, the states get to decide that. Usually they can pay 50 to 90% of your salary. Another thing to remember here is that, wait, I forgot. Let's see if it'll come back to me later. Okay, so as of December 23, I know that these 12 states provide the paid family and medical leave. I'll give y'all a second to just glance and see if your state is in here. It's California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington State, and Washington, D.C. A few other states may provide a partial version of this. And what that means is that, for example, they may cover medical leaves, paid medical leaves for people in the state, but not necessarily leave to care for the family. So that's why it's partial. And also in 2024, if your state isn't here, check, because states may pass resolutions to make this available next year. So that was the first option, was the paid family and medical leave to get paid. Option 2 is STD. This does not stand for sexually transmitted diseases. This stands for short-term disability, and this is the kind of STD that you want. It's a company level thing, which means it depends on the employers if they provide this for you. Important thing to note about short-term disability is that it does not offer you job protection. So if you use short-term disability leave, companies don't have to hold or give you your job back after you come back. The maximum length for this one is 26 weeks. It can cover 40 to 70% of your salary when you're impaired from working. And you really have to prove to them that you're impaired from working. So, who can take short-term disability? Think of it as like a healthcare benefit. If your employer has been deducting STD premiums from your paycheck, then you can use this. Not all employers provide this, but several states mandate that companies provide this benefit to their employees. And they may have some eligibility criteria, such as that, hey, you have to be working for a company for at least 90 days in order to be able to utilize this benefit. It varies by company. So, anybody interested in where this money comes from? This isn't free. Nobody is giving us free money. I learned while putting this presentation together that it's actually coming from us, from you, for both the options, paid family leave or short-term disability. Because both of these are insurance-based systems, which means that you're making monthly contributions towards these, and your employer may contribute with you, may match your contribution. And this is the insurance payout that you can call on when you're in time of need, in time of medical need. Just saw Regina's question. Can you combine FMLA and STD to get the job security? Yes, and I'll get to that later. So here's a summary of all the leaves that I've covered so far. FMLA is at federal level. It's job protected. It's unpaid, but the law requires the company to maintain your health benefits. And you can get it for 12 weeks maximum. Paid family medical leave, which exists at a state level, can be job protected, often is, at least for a certain duration. Will pay you a percentage of your salary, can be 6 to 20 plus weeks, depending upon how it gets approved. And short-term disability, which is company level, it is not job protected, pays a percentage of your salary, and it lasts up to 25 weeks. If things go longer than 25 weeks, it can turn into long-term disability. So to answer your question, Regina, yes, all these leaves apply concurrently. So what that means is you have 12 weeks of FMLA, which is, say, job protected, and company will maintain the health benefits. In that time, you can get paid by the PFML, the state-based family medical leave, if your state has that. If you don't have that, then you can get paid using your short-term disability. But important thing to note is that after that 12-week mark, when you're still covered by FMLA, companies can drop your health coverage. They may pull something shady. And we've heard that this kind of thing has happened. So the dotted lines essentially that you see here are refer to the part that may not overlap with FMLA. And that's the part where you got to be a little bit more careful about that. Hey, make sure that your health benefits are being maintained. You may have to like get periods of weeks approved separately after the 12-week mark when it stops overlapping with FMLA. So I walked you through the type of leaves, which is FMLA, PFML, and short-term disability, STD. Talked about the ways to get paid. And the next part for here that we'll talk about is the application process, how you actually get the leave. So, but before you start the process, you may be wondering, what do I need to have in place? It's more like a who do I need to have in place? You need to have a healthcare provider on board. By healthcare provider, I mean someone who is authorized to diagnose and treat physical and mental health conditions. My rule of thumb is go for folks who are authorized to prescribe medicines to patients. So having a healthcare provider on board means they're supportive of your mental health needs. And more importantly, they're willing to fill out the FMLA paperwork for you. So what kind of healthcare providers qualify for FMLA? We know by the FMLA law and the regulations that primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, psychiatrists definitely are covered. Now, remember, these are the people who are covered by that rule of thumb, authorized to prescribe medicine. Supposedly, they are also supposed to accept clinical psychologists and clinical social workers. Now, you may be wondering, what about my therapist? The answer is it depends. Therapists with these credentials that are on the screen are often not accepted under FMLA regulations. So LPC, LMHC, LPCC, if they have these credentials, they're often not accepted. But some employers may choose to accept certification from these professionals. So I see a question in the chat, which is, who do you get these papers from? And I will get to that. Thank you for the question, and I will answer it just in a couple slides later. So I talked about which therapists aren't going to be covered or are likely to not be covered. But if your therapist falls under these non-approved categories, they still might be able to help. Ask them or ask a therapist if you don't have one. Have you supported clients with getting FMLA before? Are you permitted to fill out FMLA paperwork for clients? If neither of these, ask them if they are willing to give you a referral for a psychiatrist. A lot of times, our therapists can work together with psychiatrists to deliver the treatment that FMLA then considers that, okay, yes, you definitely are good to go and are approved. So once you've identified a healthcare provider who can support you in the process of taking this leave of absence, get clear on the dates. So we've been talking about how this week lasts 12 weeks, right? You need to get clear on when you need to take the dates, because the dates that they put on the form is what's going to be, what am I trying to say? The dates that are put on the form is what matters. So what that means is have a clear conversation with the healthcare provider about the total duration of the leave that they're willing to support you to get. 12 weeks is maximum. A lot of times they will willingly fill out the paperwork for 12 weeks. Sometimes they may say that, hey, let's do this for 1 month, and then we might be able to renew this for another month. And they keep it close like that, which is also okay. But as long as you have a clear conversation about what you need, when the leave needs to start, and when you'd like it to end, that should be good. Don't be afraid to advocate for what you need. So yeah, just see Becca's comment in the chat that Becca asked for 12 weeks straight. I asked for that too. And sometimes for clinicians who've been doing this and assisting clients with this, they might know better about, hey, I've been filling out paperwork to help people from this company, and this company approves it better if we do it in 1 month plus 1 month plus 1 month period as opposed to 3 months straight. So there's wisdom that they may be able to share with you if they've been doing it for clients as well. I wanted to say before we jump into the how-to part of taking the leave, if there are any questions that are coming up, yes, please drop them in the chat. And apparently I'm able to multitask. But if I don't answer them now, they'll either get answered in the slides or I will find a way to answer them later. All right. So before we get into that once more, let's talk about what feelings lead people to look for a leave. This is what's described in my experience, in the people that I've talked to: dread about going into work, insomnia. I started having panic attacks. I was scared to open the work laptop. I broke down crying. I wanted to quit. I couldn't get out of bed. I feel trapped. I'm irritable all the time. I can't handle this. If you're thinking, well, it's not that bad for me, that's good, but please know that it doesn't have to be that bad. We're sharing this now so you can take a leave before your mental health hits those desperate low points. Okay, so starting the process. The leave application process has roughly 3 stages. I think of it as like initiate, filling forms, and the tracking approval. 3 stages. So, step 1, search the words leave of absence on your company's internal website or in the employee handbook. See what they have available written already internally. Step 2, find the phone number to call. That's what essentially you will get when you search for leave of absence in your company intranet. And if your company is a covered employer, they'll give you a phone number to call. Sometimes for some companies, they may have a website link where you can initiate the leave. Okay. Apparently there is a question in the chat that I will take before I get to step 2 or further, which is that, is it illegal for them to not give 12 weeks if we need it? Or is it just case by case and they can give you less time legally? See, that's the thing. It's completely up to how the healthcare provider evaluates you. And it's up to them to be able to tell you that, hey, I think that you need 3 weeks of leave, or that, hey, I think you can definitely use 12 weeks of leave. It's 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 up to them. That's why your healthcare providers are your partners in this journey. That's why I said, don't be afraid to advocate for what you need. And if you don't find what you're needing with one healthcare provider, try a different one. There's no harm. Some may be more comfortable and supportive and mental health oriented more than others. Yeah, and the reason it's up to them is because they're the ones who need to fill out the paperwork for you to be able to get approved, which we'll get into in the next part. Okay, so in step 2, I talked about a number to call. You may be wondering about, who's this call going to go to? So usually the calls would go to a separate department that handles disability and leave services. It isn't the same as HR, at least in the tech companies from the people that we talked with. A hot tip is anytime you call that number, expect to get a different person on the line. It's a little bit like a call center. So disability and leave services, they are handled differently company to company. So for example, Lyft uses a third-party provider called Larkin. IBM uses MetLife. Amazon has their own leave of absence and accommodations department. A smaller company who is still covered may employ a disability and leave specialist who works within the HR department. But that may be for like if your company is really, really small. So, will this call alert my manager? Do I need their approval? No. You do not need their approval. You making this call is not going to alert your manager. Your manager plays no role in the FMLA process because this is private medical information. You don't need to disclose why you need to leave to your manager, to your teammates, or anybody else that you work with. The only people who are involved in this process are you, your healthcare provider, and the DLS people that you may talk to, more than one sometimes. So step 3, now that you know where this number is likely going to go to, call that phone number. Tell them I need to take a medical leave of absence. They'll open a case or account for you on their side. And note that after this first phone call, it's typical for communication to transition to be over emails. But if you feel more comfortable with call, you can always call them. Okay, so now we're on step 4. This is where that second stage of things starts. It all centers around forms. So you will, once they open a case for you, you will receive the forms from them, and they'll also include filling instructions. They usually will email you these forms. I'll just hang here and tell you a little bit of what those forms look like. Sometimes there's like an authorization form that you have to sign to allow them to start communicating with your healthcare provider for this purpose. And then you may have to sign a form saying that, okay, you'll apply for the state-based paid family leave directly on the state, if that's an option for you. And then the rest of the forms are sent to your healthcare provider, where they need to essentially write down that, yes, you're suffering from whatever symptoms that are arising because of you being burnt out, like anxiety, depression, other things. And they also have to write down like some type of treatment plan. So that's why, going back to that question that was asked earlier, that it depends on them and how they want to approach your treatment for this. Well, I shouldn't have put that in quotes. When I took an FMLA, I had to go to my therapist twice a week. So yeah, that's not in quotes. So when you get these forms, very important, note when the forms are due. Usually they can give you a grace period when like time between a case is opened and when forms are due. Make note of that date. And this grace period can vary by company and whoever they are working with for disability and leave services. But don't expect it to be longer than 3 weeks. Definitely won't be that long. So step 5, you get the forms filled, sign what you need to sign, email the other forms to your healthcare provider. Usually they can email you the filled forms back, and so that you can pass them on back to the DLS people, or sometimes they can also fax them directly to DLS. Sometimes they'll do both. So step 6, once you have all these forms filled, submit them, email them, filled and signed back to your DLS rep or the case manager. Or if you have access to a portal, upload forms there. Hot tip is that when you've uploaded and gathered all the documents from your end and you've sent them to them, let your case manager know, or call them and let them know that, hey, you've uploaded all the docs so they can start review. Now, step 7, you've taken care of a lot of the forms that are going to give you that FMLA and hopefully short-term disability for your company to do that if they're going to use. But the 7th step is where you have to apply for the paid family medical leave directly if your state offers that. Because this is often a good way to get paid. And usually the instructions, they will include the disability and leave services people will send you a link to the state website where you apply directly. Okay, Do you need to fill anything for short-term disability? Do you need to apply for that separately? From what I've seen and heard, if your short-term disability benefits are through your employer, then they usually take care of applying for that along with your FMLA application. I know that that's at least true for the approved FMLA duration. If you are wanting short-term disability for longer than 12 weeks, they may need you to fill out some more forms for that. Okay, so the form filling is done. You've submitted all the forms. Next phase is tracking approval. So step 8 is track your FMLA approval, because this can get approved within 2 to 5 business days. When it's approved, the DLS person will usually call or email you their decision. Be prepared for a little bit of back and forth here. Sometimes they may need more information from your healthcare provider. Sometimes you upload the documents, but they don't see it on their end. So you have to like kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. So you're tracking your FMLA approval. Also keep an eye out for their short-term disability approval. Like I said before, for the duration that usually overlaps with FMLA, this usually gets approved within the same time frame as your FMLA. But for longer, this may look different. Yeah. Step 10 of, and this will be the last one. Track your paid family and medical leave approval, which you applied for directly via the state. Because you applied with the state's going to be responsible for approving this directly. Until then, your paid benefit status with them would show up as pending. And a helpful tip from what we learned from people who've done this is that the state will not email you when the leave is approved. So you may have to keep checking the website. So look at it every week to see when it gets approved. Okay, so once FMLA is approved, you can stop going into work the day your leave starts, the day that was on that form. And once your paid options, whether that's coming through the paid family leave, medical leave, or short-term disability, once that's approved, that is when you can start getting paid. And like, I don't know if I emphasize, but anything that's paid takes longer to get approved. This part can take 4 to 6 weeks to get approved, just FYI. And once you're approved to actually get the money, you may have to submit claims for all of the missed weeks of your leave to get reimbursed. So what I mean by that is, say your FMLA started 4 weeks ago, you get approved for short-term disability or paid family leave after 5 weeks. In that case, you have to go and submit claims for that missed period, because they can backfill your payments and reimburse you. And then you may have to continue submitting claims weekly to get paid going forward through the entire approved duration. Now, you won't get money for the first 7 days of the leave, because this is just how these insurance-based systems work, that you have to show that you have been impaired for working for at least 7 calendar days, and only then they will kick in the benefit. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I'm seeing some questions. I will try and get to them once I finish this portion. So let me give you a process summary. You search the word leave of absence internally. You find the number to call. You call that number and request the leave. You receive the forms to be filled. You get the forms filled. You submit the forms, and then you apply for paid family leave with the state if you live in a state where that's offered. Once all that is done, track the approval for FMLA, track the approval for short-term disability, and track the approval for PFML if you applied. That's pretty much the whole process. Sounds like a lot, but essentially just remember those 3 stages that I mentioned: initiating the leave, filling out the forms, and tracking the approvals. Okay, so I think I want to answer this question that Joe asked, that paid family medical leave cannot be used for your own individual condition, though, correct? It can, because it's very much like FMLA. So it allows you to care for yourself when you are in medical leave, medical need. But like I said before, if you want to take paid family leave because it's paid, these leaves will run concurrently. So the company will also apply FMLA at the same time, if you're eligible, because they don't want you all to be able to take one leave after another, which is important point that I forgot to mention. That's why they run concurrently. Okay, so things to note. Is my stock vesting schedule affected while on leave? And it depends totally on your company. If you want to get this information, check your benefits guide and the stock plan document. You can also call the Disability and Leave Services and ask them for the LOA benefits guide before opening a case. Another important thing, FMLA versus workers' comp. Now, technically, FMLA is for injuries and ailments that are not caused by work. Worker comp is when you got hurt while working in the workplace due to a job-related danger or risk. It's a whole different process. I have no idea how that goes, probably requiring a different level of proof. So yes, even though burnout is largely caused by work, to get an FMLA, you kind of have to say otherwise when you're initiating the leave. But that doesn't mean that you can't be open and honest with your healthcare provider. I think they understand. So that's end of part 1. That was a lot of information, I know, but I hope that this info will help you take a leave of absence when you need it. If you have any other questions that come up later as you're processing, feel free to email it to the what's my email address? Yes, may@normally.com. And of course, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll do my best to find out answers to your questions. Because in the journey of healing from burnout, there is no substitute for rest. That's where I'm going to end part 1. Remember that you deserve rest. And in our transitioning to part 2, you will hear my friend Becca's story about how she took a leave of absence and came back stronger than before out of burnout. Okay, I'm gonna let Becca start sharing.
Sure. Yeah, let's see if this works, I hope. Oh, it says disabled share. You can also screen share well. Okay.
Let me try again. Allow participants to share screen. Yep. How's it going?
I think it still says
No?
disabled.
What? No? What do you get when you start sharing your screen?
I get a pop-up that says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So maybe you just have to stop sharing your screen.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, done.
Nice. Okay. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm going to share this screen and hopefully be able to present it. Awesome. Can y'all see that?
Yep.
It's loading. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, May. It's really a pleasure to be able to talk about my mental health journey with y'all today. Yeah, I wanted to share how when I took a 12-week leave of absence from Lyft earlier this year, how it changed my outlook, my ability to come back to work in a regulated state and have very intentional ideas for how I want my career to feel, And yeah, just I hope this is empowering. Sometimes it's just such a stigmatized conversation, and I want to share that it doesn't have to be that way, and hopefully this can add to that conversation. A little bit about the agenda. I'll talk about who I am, how I started my journey in tech at Lyft through Ada Developers Academy. I'll talk about what that experience was like before I took a leave, what it was like to actually take the leave, and how I spent my time so that I made sure I could come back with new coping skills. How doing that actually helped me rewire past trauma and created safety for myself, making the decision to come back to Lyft after that leave of absence. And yeah, what changed about me, in me, how I show up to work, and how now I'm reclaiming and inhabiting my power in a brand new way. It's been revolutionary, really. And trigger warning there, the story does talk about sexual abuse. So it's heavy, but I think it's worth talking about. So for me and Ada, who am I? I did my college degree in music history, so definitely not like you, May. That definitely kind of lends itself more towards having even more imposter syndrome. I know a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome, basically everyone, but for me, it definitely played into this as well. Having a non-traditional background meant that I was pursuing the humanities, if you will. I was really passionate about creating a poetry startup. So I was in Boston doing that. And when that failed pretty hard, I thought, hey, coding can be my path to redemption. This can be the way that I can not struggle with failure anymore, because I know this is going to provide for myself financially. And I know I can, prove myself that I'm worthy of doing things that are respected by society, which is kind of problematic. But anyways, I'll talk about starting at Ada. It was a very competitive, free year-long coding tuition school for women and gender nonconforming folks. So it felt like the validation that I was really hoping for. I found out about Ada when I moved across the country to Seattle and got really, really lucky. But once I started in January of 2020, it turned out to be an experience that I'm not sure any of us in cohort 13 were really prepared for. I was immediately kind of thrust into this journey, of course, of learning the fundamentals of coding, learning what it was like to work on projects full stack. And it was a lot in a very short amount of time. So it was very, fight or flight. It put me into that survival mode of, okay, let's just get this done. Let's get this done. The curriculum being only 6 months, you really had to prove yourself, I suppose. And I think I burned out at least twice during that period of time, especially when the pandemic forced us to move remote after about 6 weeks of in-person instruction. So, but at that time, there wasn't time to take care of that or to really recognize that as burnout truly. So I ignored it. I kept going. I started the Lyft internship, which I, again, was super lucky to get, but I did not know how to cope well or how to think about myself in that work environment in a healthy way. So I just let stress overcome me a lot of those times. So what you see here is a picture that I posted on Instagram when Lyft sent me the work laptop that I was to do my internship on. The caption even says, "It's happening. I must be a big kid now," or something. Because at the time it felt like, okay, I got to prove myself. This is my shot. I better not mess it up. I better not be a failure. I had an extreme fear of not getting an offer. And I had, imposter syndrome big time, as I mentioned. Well, fast forward, after my Lyft internship, I got a full-time offer, and I started at Lyft in March of 2021. I really didn't care about which team I joined or the work itself. I just knew I couldn't fail. Didn't want to fail. I kept bringing my past conditioning into this new environment. I was trying to prove myself as a new engineer, running up against imposter syndrome, doing the entire work at that time fully remotely. And in addition to, layoffs and all of the stress that brought to the industry and the normal mayhem of working at a large tech company, it was a very stressful time. I started therapy though in May of 2021. So just a couple months after I joined full time, I knew I needed that because my internship was, it was stressful. And that was starting to help. And I really credit having great healthcare benefits through Lyft with my ability to start that therapy journey, which has been so important for me even to this day. Um, but that was one bright spot amidst of a time that was really stressful. I did feel the need to earn a promotion to go from T3 entry level engineer to T4, maybe mid career level. And so I was hustling. I got loaned out to a new team for about 6 months in 2022. And so onboarding into new environment is really stressful. But when eventually the promotion did come in May of this year, I could not feel good about it. I don't think I even posted on LinkedIn about it. I was just like, oh, this is what it feels like. Great. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It was just this letdown moment of I've been struggling in survival mode so long for this. And shortly after I got the news that I got promoted, amidst the time when so many talented engineers were laid off senselessly, I just hit unignorable burnout this time. It was like I couldn't just push it under the rug anymore. I had to address it. So that was in May and June of this year. So I went through the process that we've heard about a lot today from May. I applied for a leave of absence, 12 weeks. My physician was the one who signed off on it. And I embarked on this journey of taking intentional time for myself and, yeah, processing really hard things. I was reading this book that was recommended to me by several family members, actually, called The Body Keeps the Score. It was an incredible read, a really hard read, but it really turned me on to this idea of what have I been holding on to? Why do I carry so much anxiety? Um, and I had already planned a trip home to Oklahoma to visit my family for a wedding. And that trip had already been on the books for a long time. But I actually knew since I had the leave approved that I needed to spend more time there to address some really hard things. This was my time to process my past trauma. I asked my then partner to come with me for moral support. I extended that trip and I said, hey, I really need help doing the hardest thing, which I knew, having worked with my therapist, was to confront my stepdad and my mom for the incidents that happened to my sister and me when I was 15. My stepdad had a child pornography addiction, and I found a camera that was pointed at our shower. And my mom didn't divorce him, and it recurred again a couple years later, and it was a very, very hard time. And as an adult, I wanted to stand up for myself and say, hey, I'm not okay with that. Like, it had these effects. I wasn't able to be resilient and bounce back at work because I think some of these messages that I had learned from that time, where we swept things under the rug for all intents and purposes, where we said sorry, but then no actions were taken. He wasn't reported to the authorities, anything like that. So I said, no, I'm moving my stuff out. That was a really hard thing, but I took the time to do that since I had that time. The other hardest thing I learned while in Oklahoma was that my maternal grandma, Yoshi, if you've seen this picture, she had actually passed away. And that was a really hard time, but I think really helpful for me to be able to internalize these messages of, hey, I can't keep holding on to the what ifs, the shoulds, and things that I wish could have been different about the past. This is time for me to be released and to let go. I also wanted to take responsibility for the choices I had made since leaving Oklahoma and getting me to where I was. I think that was a critical piece too in addressing something really hard. I was also able to add some good into my life in a way like I've never done before. I was able to visit a friend in Boulder, Colorado, where we went multi-pitch climbing in a guided experience. This is me on the flat irons. I never knew I would be able to do something like that. And my body was exhilarated, literally, like being up so high for so long. it pushed my comfort zone, but in the way that was healthy, because at the end of the day, I was so proud of the literal heights that my body allowed me to go to. And there were points where I wanted to give up. I didn't think I was brave enough to go over a really tricky pass, but I, with the help of my friend and the guide, they were so encouraging, and I did that, and I felt so proud of myself. Climbing and hiking with friends was so important to me as well, because I realized I was trying to shove my friendships and my physical joys, like doing things outside with people. I would shove those things to the margins before when I was working. I was, oh, work is most important. Then I prioritize friends after that. But no, I was like trying to intentionally flip this switch on that. And so I did a lot of hiking in the beautiful like Seattle summer. It was a great time to take a leave if you're in Seattle. I knew that I had pretty low self-compassion from my therapist's conversations with me. And so I decided to treat self-compassion practices as my work. So I went to Elliott Bay bookstore and bought this workbook on mindful self-compassion. And I've been working through it slowly, but it's really been helping me at keeping that front center, talking kindly to myself, not wanting myself to suffer. And a part of that too is honoring my body. I never used to think of yoga as real exercise. That might be rude of me, but now I do. Now my lens on yoga has changed, so that it's not so much about working out, burning calories. It's about just physically existing in space and recognizing what feels good to your body. And that has been really, really game changing for me. All of that work had sort of led up to the biggest conclusion, or the biggest unexpected insight that I was not at all like expecting during my leave. But I remembered, my body let me remember, once I was creating safety for myself, that this incident that happened to me in college, which I thought was my fault for the last about 10 years, it wasn't my fault. I actually realized that I had been raped. And I wasn't able to realize that before. And I realized it's not necessarily because of anything I had missed. It was that my body wasn't used to letting my identity absorb the reality of that, because I would ignore red flags. I would sweep things under the rug. My danger detection system in my brain was not calibrated correctly from the past abuse in my family. So I realized I needed to write my emotional origin story in factual terms in Google Docs. This is a 14-page single space document that came over a course of 1 or 2 weeks, where I was just like, okay, let's get to the root of all of this. And that helped me contextualize that trauma, trace it back across generations. And I really think this is a part of the reason why now I'm trying my best to break the cycle. I'm not going to seek out abusers anymore, because I know what that's like. I know that's not okay with me anymore. So I'm so happy I don't have to repeat that familial story. Once I was able to see my story clearly for what it was, I gave myself permission to not identify with it anymore. It didn't get to define me. I didn't have to feel ashamed or have to hide any part of myself anymore. I started openly having conversations and connections with folks, and finally feeling known, truly known for the first time. It was an incredible experience to have after so much heaviness. And I truly credit that the leave of absence helped restore my agency and generate motivation from within. I was no longer just trying to react to things. I really wanted to create something that I could be proud of. And I knew too that I had to rewire a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of past stories that were not helpful to me, but I need help doing that. So this mug it says "Calm AF" on it. That is actually the name of a podcast I started listening to heavily, and then got so jazzed about that I hired Kristen Finch of that podcast as my life coach, because I needed help. This is not something that we're taught how to do. We're not taught usually how to emotionally regulate and how to talk kindly to ourselves. It's so much easier to be self-critical. And so I don't want that future for myself, and I need help. So that was a huge part of creating safety for myself, even to this day. When it came to making that decision to come back to Lyft or not, I decided yes. If I put myself first, I can choose self love instead of fear. And fear does not get to finish my story at Lyft. I wanted to be able to come back feeling so much better and talking with people about that and saying, hey, this is what helped me. I came back with this realization too that even if I am the next one to be laid off, like deep down, I really know that that'll be okay. It will be hard, but I know that I can handle that hard thing because I know that I will keep myself safe, and I'll put myself as the priority. A big part of that is keeping some intentional guardrails. So I only work 9 to 5. Before I would say, oh, 5:36, that's fine. No, now just 9 to 5, and sometimes not even that. I'm continuing life coaching, yoga every morning or most mornings, climbing, self compassion practices, being with friends. And I decided to start Becca's Brave Cafe, which is an email that I decided to send out every workday that helps keep me focused on the why and that I'm worthy. Every day when I show up to do my job, this is a hard job, but it's something that I know I can do, knowing that I'm enough. What it actually looks like to come back to Lyft, week 1 and 2, they were really nice. I felt so warmly welcomed back to Lyft, so low stress. That was very surprising to me. But by week 3, I started noticing red flags. We got reorg news, very common. I felt again the same dynamics as before, kind of from my team with low accountability, and I newly started feeling excluded from a pretty critical project from our team. So these were red flags that I didn't want to ignore this time. I actually started having conversations for doing an internal transfer. After the layoffs, it seemed like they were actually able to open up internal transfer opportunities again at Lyft. So I thought, hey, why not this? Like, I don't need to be at this company, but let's just see. Let's just see if this could be an option. If not, I was prepared to put in my 2 weeks because I was not going to put up with feeling excluded from that critical project on my old team. So by prioritizing myself in week 4 and week 5, doing interviews with my new prospective team, I did get the green light and officially transferred to a new team at Lyft. And since then, things have been good. I no longer expect that my team will be able to perfectly support me because I know I can and must support myself first. So, what changed in me, about me, and how I show up to work? Basically, everything. I'll just take a second to let some of these truths ring out for you. I think before believe, I thought I believed these things on paper, but they weren't in my heart. I didn't actually know them, but now I do. And that feels really important. And I want that for everybody. Sorry, I just got emotional. Um, so, what's now and what's next? I've really been enjoying reclaiming and inhabiting my power. So, I've been doing my guardrails mostly consistently, giving myself grace for those days that I forget to write in my gratitude journal or forget to do yoga. But those have been helping me so much. And I doing Becca's Brave Cafe, where I send those emails out every workday. I have a small little list, but it feels so important for me that I can share reminders because it's so easy to get caught up in business as usual that we forget these things. So this is really, really special to me, and I love that I can continue to do them. Every chance I get, I am such an advocate for mental health, compassion, and just taking care of yourself. And I'm really having a lot of fun reconnecting with that intuitive voice inside, the thing that's really, I think, me at the core, and uncovering my why, my purpose. Why am I doing what I'm doing? How am I spending my time? So approaching work way more intentionally, and instead of, am I good enough to work on this team? Am I, doing that whole rigmarole? Now I know, hey, yes, I can do it. It'll take time, but I can do it. And yeah, it feels so great to be intentional. Volunteering, spending time with people, making new connections, being outside, all of these things are really helping me continue to live an empowered life. And beta testing normally has actually been a huge part of that journey as well. Here is just a glimpse of what my week 4 return to lift looked like. That was the week I was really having those internal conversations and pursuing other internal opportunities, because in the red, I knew those were the times where I was like, oh, I really need to transfer. And the greens were when I started feeling, oh, okay, I can talk with this person on this new team, or what do I need to do to do an interview. So that was really cool to visualize. Normally has helped me reinforce everything I've learned for my leave, helped me keep my mental health front and center, differentiate what's within my control and what's not. A lot of times things at work aren't in our control at all, but it is super helpful to know what is. And it helps me learn from myself. My repeat feelings I keep having, I don't, I want to be able to translate that into empowered action for myself. And it was funny because when I had my appointment with my physician to certify that I was feeling better and able to return to work, I asked him, how many people who take leaves come back feeling better? And he shocked me by saying, in his experience, he's seen about 50% of people who come back with new coping techniques, new ability to handle work stresses better. So 1 out of every 2 people who get the opportunity to take a leave are maybe not knowing how to approach their leave intentionally. But if you think that this could be helpful, and that you don't really need much of a reason besides you have anxiety or depression, or like that something isn't right, that's all the reason you need to take a leave. And if you do, just know you're not alone, you're not broken, you are enough, and you are already worthy. And yeah, these are so true to me, and I hope they become true for you as well. That's basically the end of what I wanted to talk about today. You can read my full story on LinkedIn if you have interest in that, or if you want to join Becca's Brave Cafe, you can see more of me, my cats. That's Hoodwink on the top and Lighthouse on the bottom. We would love to see you there. Yeah, no, I'm open to staying in touch. I would love that. I would love to chat more about mental health, leaves of absences, what it's like to do therapy or life coaching, or what self-compassion really means, really any and all of this. I just wish you well on your journey. And yeah, I'm going to hand it back over to May, but thank you all so much for being here. It really means a lot.
See, I told y'all that this is like my friend's remarkable story, and it just shows what's possible when you are able to take the space, time, and rest, away from work. Hello, Kitty. I think I have unmuted or tried to at least uh, allow everyone to unmute. And if y'all have any questions, I know we're at time. We will stay back for 6, 7 more minutes and just allow you to, ask us anything that you need to know right now. Just any affirmation that you need right now. Because we both understand this is not easy. There's a lot of feelings that come up, even when you realize that, oh my God, I think I'm going to need to take a break. And that's normal. That's natural. We've been there.
Yep.
Okay.
When you showed the slide of like what does it feel like to lead up to a leave? Oh my goodness, I actually got chills again from reading those. Feeling dread, feeling like you don't want to open your work laptop. Oh, my body remembers that too. That's crazy.
Joe, I see your hand raised. I have unmuted you.
Thank you, May. And thank you for coordinating this. This was so awesome hearing both of you speak. I was almost at tears like twice, and that doesn't happen very often. Um, Very inspiring. So I have a question for Becca. Do you feel like being remote kind of helped you or hindered you in any way? I'm fully remote. I'm a nurse and I went from being in center, being everything to everyone all the time to like being alone all the time. I mean, I like it now for the most part, but like I wonder like for you personally in your journey, how did that play into it?
Holy, Becca, are you unmuted? What have I done? Okay, let's see. Asked to unmute. Yes, just did. Did it work?
Okay, I'll just keep myself unmuted. Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I think being remote, it's weird because I almost learned how to code almost entirely in a remote environment. Now having had a hybrid experience going in 3 times a week, I can say that if I had been in person earlier on in my coding journey and learning what it's like to be a software engineer, I think that would have been very different. I think I would have enjoyed that in-person support and feeling like, oh, okay, I can see that people actually aren't working all hours. They're leaving at 3:34, or little signals like that might have told me, hey, it's okay to feel so stuck on a bug and not know what to do, but be like, I'm gonna go for a walk. Instead of what I was doing at home in my room, like crying, being like, why can't I figure this out? So yeah, for me, being remote definitely was it it kind of normalized struggling alone, I guess. And now that I know it doesn't have to be that way, even if I continue to work remotely, now I know, hey, other people are taking breaks for themselves more and they're not working crazy overtime on the whole. So I think that's been really helpful. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Okay, here's my attempt to ask, like I'm gonna click on ask all to unmute. Y'all should see a pop-up where, okay, looks like it worked. Yay, okay, people are able to unmute. Okay, any questions, any feelings, fear that's coming up around all of this? Know that, yeah, we're both here. Please find us and connect with us on LinkedIn. You have our emails. I have recorded this and it is still recording, so I should be able to send it out to y'all probably by the end of the week because I'm gonna completely unplug tomorrow, rest and recharge myself. Okay, yeah, I have a good night, everybody, and yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, Hassan, my friend. Hassan is my friend who reshared this event to so many places that I'm like, thank you. Thank you for, amplifying.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, joined a little late, but assuming good content, and I'll check out the recording.
Yeah, they that was our goal to make this process less mysterious. And yeah, hope we've done that.
Yeah, I should have said too that not only did I get paid for my entire leave, my equity vesting schedule did not get impacted at all. So I just collected that quarterly check and I invested it in life coaching. But I was like, wow, this is a game changer for me, and I didn't incur any financial penalty for doing that. And that, yeah, I think if more people were aware of that. I hope that gives them permission to just go for it. Ask for what you need. It might not even do any harm at all. Like, and even, but honestly, even if it had been unpaid, I would have been okay with that too, because I just knew I needed to take a break, and job protection was good enough for me at the bare minimum.
Yeah. Totally. I feel like when I took FMLA, I had no idea if I would get paid. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about anything. And I
Right.
learned so much from putting this presentation together and from talking to y'all and others who've been through this at other companies, more than I would have ever learned. Like especially the part that this is coming from our own money.
Yeah.
This is like,
I know.
it's our own money. Nobody's
shocked to hear
giving this
that.
us. Yeah, I know, right? And so if it's coming from our own money, that means like we should use this benefit when we need it.
Absolutely.
I had seen some questions around PTO before, and I remember when I went on leave, like at first I took just PTO and I used up all my PTO, and I was like, okay, still not ready to go back. Time to go on a longer leave. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody has any questions. I see Tyler, Justin, Hassan, Chantal. Is that how you pronounce your name? Please correct me if I got that wrong. Yeah, feel free to enjoy and carry on with the rest of your evening, folks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. This is great.
Thanks so much for doing this with me, Becca. It's like your story is inspiring, and
Oh, yes.
yes, and you know that now.
Oh,
even
I
more.
do, but I feel that way about anyone who is courageous enough to take a lead for themselves and to say, "Hey, I did that. Let's talk about it." And reconnecting with you before I came back to Lyft was just totally serendipitous. But I don't think it
know.
was completely random. I think there was some
There was
preordained
something
somehow.
going on that was like, okay, find each other. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Totally.
Have a great evening.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.